From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
This November, Texas voters will have a choice of who they want to represent them in the U.S. Senate for the next 6 years. Incumbent Senator Ted Cruz or Dallas Congressman Colin Allred. This morning, we're hearing from both men about issues facing Texans and why they want to be your next senator. Let's start with the Democrat from Dallas, Congressman Colin Allred. Representative, thank you for taking some time out to talk with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, let's first talk about some of the things happening in Washington. Just last week, the president proposed a new rule related to the immigration and the border. It would essentially make it tougher to seek asylum for some migrants at the border. You've obviously been very vocal about your thoughts about what we're doing at the border. I'll tell you, state leaders, Governor Greg Abbott is calling this new proposal feckless. What are your thoughts on what the Biden administration is proposing right now?
Yeah, well, I've certainly been critical of the administration. I think they have been needing to do more for some time. And, you know, my family's from Brownsville, the tip of Texas. It's where my grandfather was a customs officer after serving in the Navy in the Pacific in World War II. It's where my mom and my aunt grew up. I spent a lot of my childhood down there. And when we have these increases in migrants that we've been seeing, and these surges and these record numbers, which is what we were experiencing in December of last year, you know, those communities feel the brunt of that. And so what I've been saying is, for the good of Texas, we need to respond to this. But there also was legislation in the Senate, bipartisan legislation to try and address this, that I supported and that I came out and said we should pass, that Ted Cruz opposed, not because he disagreed with the policy, but because he wants to have the problem to run on in November. And to me, that just has to be so outrageous to every Texan.
Yeah. You know, the particular thing about making the asylum standards tougher, do you think that's something that we need to be doing?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is that most of the folks who are showing up at the southern border are seeking asylum, but about 90% of them are going to be rejected. But it's going to take 5, 6, 7 years for them to go through that process, because we have such a huge backlog and we don't have the resources necessary to deal with these increased numbers that we're experiencing. And so what we were trying to do previously was to both raise the threshold in terms of seeking asylum, but then also hire more immigration judges, more CBP personnel, more administrative personnel, and that was in the Senate legislation that Ted Cruz opposed. Mm-hmm. And so no state actually would have benefited more from that. Billions of dollars for border security would have come to Texas. I'm still hopeful that at some point maybe we can get that done. But it seems to me like we have folks who want to have more of a political issue than actually trying to solve something. You
know, one of the things that's really interesting is that you are teaming up with a Republican mega donor to talk about work permits for migrants. Talk to us about that proposal, really what you're suggesting and why you think it will work.
Well, I'm always looking for anything we can do to try and make our immigration system better fit the needs of our economy, but also consistent with our values. And we do have a crisis at the border. We need to address it. We need to address our immigration system as a whole, which is broken, and we haven't addressed it in a comprehensive way since Ronald Reagan was the president. But when it comes to things like work permits, when we have jobs that we can't fill, and we have Texans who are living in a home with somebody who may be undocumented, but who wants to work and who has been doing the right things, not breaking the law, then we need to have some way, I think, to fill that gap, to help folks get to work, helping our economy, but also I think consistent with who we are. And so that's what we're trying to say there, just a common sense adjustment. But it's just one part of what should really be a part of a broader look at our immigration system that's entirely broken. And it's been broken, honestly, because folks like Ted Cruz don't want to fix it. And I keep coming back to that, because this is something that we can solve. We know what the framework looks like. We know what that ultimate deal is going to be, but we have to have leaders in place who actually want to get it done.
You know, let's take off your congressman hat and put on your candidate hat for just a minute. I want to talk to you about the latest Texas Politics Project poll out of UT Austin. Obviously, polls are polls, right? And it's still early, but this poll particular had Senator Cruz with a double-digit lead over you, 46 to 33%. And my real question for you is, there was 15% of the voters who said they have no preference. They have no idea who they want to vote for yet in this election. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, there were similar polls at the same time that had the race much closer. And I think in some ways you can have a bad poll. And that seems like that one was to me. But what I think is important is I want Texans to know who I am. And I know that's what our task really is. That I was raised in Dallas by a single mom, was a public school teacher, that I went to public schools in Dallas and made it to Baylor on a scholarship, made it to the NFL, became a civil rights lawyer, have served in Congress as the most bipartisan member of our entire Texas delegation. Of 38 members of Congress from Texas, I'm the most bipartisan one. I've shown that it's possible to bring folks together. And I want to do that in the Senate. We have a senator who's not doing the job, who's been pitting us against each other, who's more about himself than us. That's how you can go on vacation when 30 million Texans are freezing in the dark and go to Cancun and only come back because you got caught. It's because you don't really care. I will care, and I'll be a senator for all of us.
What do you say when Senator Cruz says he is bipartisan, and in fact that there are Democrats who are supporting him in this race?
Well, I think, yeah.
You laugh, obviously, but give us a little bit.
I think it's laughable. I do, and I think, in the NFL we used to say, check the tape, and the tape doesn't lie. This is someone who's been proudly one of the most extreme members of the Senate for 12 years, and it's amazing that now in an election year, all of a sudden he's bipartisan. And I think folks should look at that and understand the cynicism behind that. I've been like this, I was working on a bipartisan way before I ran for this office. You don't have to just believe me in an election year. You can check my record over the years and see that I've been doing this. I'm not coming to this now just for political advantage. I'm doing it because I think that's how you get things done. And to me, that's one of the reasons why Ted Cruz has to go.
Now, let's hear from Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz, thank you for taking some time out to talk with us.
Ashley, great to be with you. Thank you.
I want to start with something that's very important to Texans. On poll after poll, they say the border is a priority for the folks here at home. And last week, we saw President Biden propose a new rule to implement what some call tougher asylum restrictions, standards, if you will, for some migrants at the border. Governor Greg Abbott has called this feckless. What's your thoughts?
Look, Biden and the Democrats are not remotely credible on it. They created this crisis, and they did so deliberately. Remember, when Joe Biden became president, when he came into office, he inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. I had worked hand in hand with President Trump. We had had incredible success securing the border. All Biden had to do was nothing. Just don't screw it up. And instead, he deliberately made a political decision, along with other senior Democrats, that they wanted this border crisis. He made 3 decisions that caused it. Number 1, the first week in office, he immediately halted construction of the border wall. Number 2, he implemented the disastrous policy of catch and release, so that when the Biden administration catches illegal aliens, they let them go in every community in Texas and every community in America. And number 3, he pulled out of the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico agreement. That was the agreement with the government of Mexico that had led to the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. As a result of those 3 decisions, the numbers skyrocketed. Today, we have had over 11 million illegal immigrants cross with Joe Biden as president. It is the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history. And the reason he's talking about it now is he wants to pretend that he's concerned about the problem. But you know what? He hasn't reversed any of those 3 decisions. They are still doing catch and release. They are still releasing criminals. They are releasing gang members. And we are seeing the human suffering and tragedy from this border crisis that sadly was deliberate from Joe Biden and the Democrats.
The Republicans blame the Democrats. The Democrats say it's the Republicans, and that includes, your opponent in the Senate race, Congressman Colin Allred, who says Republicans want this issue to campaign on. That's why they didn't pass the Senate bill. They don't want to see it fixed. What do you say to that?
Well, Ashley, but that's where truth matters. You're right. Democrats do blame Republicans. But look, Republicans aren't in charge of the executive branch. Republicans aren't in charge of the Border Patrol. Republicans aren't the ones that are releasing criminal, illegal aliens in every community in America. It is the Democrats. It is deliberate. And by the way, you mentioned Colin Allred. Look, Colin Allred's record in the House, his first 4 years in Congress, he voted 100% with Nancy Pelosi. It is a hard left record. He has voted over and over and over again in favor of open borders. He voted, I'll give you a vote that's really an amazing vote. They had a vote on whether illegal immigrants should be deported who violently assault police officers. Now listen, if you gather any group of ordinary Texans or ordinary Americans and ask them, if an illegal alien violently assaults a police officer, should he or she be deported? And any normal person would say, of course. Well, not Colin Allred. He voted nope. They get to stay here, leave the criminal illegal aliens in our communities. That's an extreme agenda. And what you see Democrats doing now is seeking political camouflage and cover, trying to hide from the very real human suffering that their policies have caused.
Senator Cruz, while I have you, I have to ask you about that ethics report related to your podcast. It accuses you of directing hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising from iHeartMedia to the Truth and Change Super PAC, which supports you. You have said that this is just not true. That's not how that works. You're not benefiting from the podcast. Tell us your thoughts on this report.
Well, listen, number one, I'm very proud of the podcast. I do the podcast 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And roughly 1 million Americans across the country tune in and listen to it because I'm describing what's happening in the Senate, the challenges facing our country, and people are frustrated with a lot of the news media because it's hard to get facts and understand what's happening, and that's why people go to the podcast. It's a big part of my job to make sure Texans are informed and know what's going on. The group you mentioned that filed a complaint, these are two left-wing groups. They're run by Democrat operatives. Every 2 years, they file complaints against a bunch of Republicans, and that's what they exist for, to file the complaints, to then have the news media cover, this left-wing, but they never mentioned they're a left-wing partisan group, filed this complaint. I can tell you the same group filed a complaint attacking my podcast last year, and it got thrown out. The Senate Ethics Committee explicitly concluded that everything I was doing was consistent with the law. And so the same group went back. It's filed another complaint. The complaint is baseless, but the whole point of it is to get reporters to repeat the charge. Listen, what I would encourage folks, come listen to the podcast. Judge for yourself, because the whole point of it is to address the issues that are important to Texans. And that is why the people of Texas have elected me to represent you in the Senate.
A little more on that no vote against deporting migrants who assault police officers. Senator Cruz was referring to the Police Act of 2023, in which Congressman Allred did vote no. It is worth noting, earlier this month, Allred was one of 54 Democrats who voted for the Detain and Deport Illegal Aliens Who Assault Cops Act, which is similar to the 2023 bill. That's Texas This Week.